wife and his 4 children. And as he traveled back to England to make arrangements for their funeral and all, as the ship passed the point where his ship passed the point where his family had gone down in the Atlantic, he just looked at God and said, "It is with my soul." What a tremendous witness, what a tremendous ministry, that no matter what heartache, no matter what circumstance we're going through, with God, it is well with our soul. And we can look to God for our strength and our support and our comfort in those deep, darkest, most trying times of our life. Thank you, Colleen. Amen. You ministered to me this morning, okay? Thank you. All right. Aren't we blessed to have this Colleen?
Amen.
And appreciate her so very much. Thank God gave me this message this morning to humble me. I have had, Robbie can testify, I've had a hard time this week coming up with a sermon. And this one verse just really has stuck in my head. But I couldn't really think of how to make a sermon out of it. But with God's help and God's provision, we will this morning. And it kind of goes along with the it is well this morning. But we are in Daniel chapter 1, verses 8 through 16. And there is a verse there that just really spoke to me this week. And I trust that God will speak to you through it this morning also. But we're going to read verses 8 through 16. But Daniel made up his mind that he would not defile himself with the king's choice food or with the wine which he drank. So he sought permission from the commander of the officials that he might not defile himself. Now God granted Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the commander of the officials. And the commander of the officials said to Daniel, "I am afraid of my lord the king, who has appointed your food and your drink. For why should he see your faces looking more haggard than the youth who are your own age? Then you would make me forfeit my head to the king." But Daniel said to the overseer, whom the commander of the officials had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, "Please test your servants for 10 days, and let us be given some vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be observed in your presence, and the appearance of the youth who are eating the king's choice food, and deal with your servants according to what you see." So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, their appearance seemed to be better, and they were fatter than all the youths who had been eating the king's choice foods. So the overseer continued to withhold their choice food and the wine they were to drink, and kept giving them vegetables. Most gracious Father, God, we just very humbly bow this morning, seeking your wisdom today, God, seeking your understanding. God, we know there are hearts breaking all around us today. We know that there are people who are in dire need of your love and compassion today. Father, we just ask that your word will speak to them today, and that if you can, in some small way, use us as your conduit today to present a word that will touch someone's heart. Father God, help it not to be our own words, but yours that we speak today. And Father, we just ask your blessings upon our service this morning. We thank you that you have promised your presence today. And may we truly feel your presence today as we gather here to fellowship, to worship, to honor you with all that we say and do. God, I beg you to forgive us where we fail you so many ways and we fail you so often. But God, guide our steps each and every day. Help us to take one step at a time in the direction that you're guiding us. And just as we accomplish one, we know that you have another prepared for us. God, for those that are sick, those that are hurting this morning, we ask your special comfort upon them today. Father, only you can help to heal, help to mend the hurts. I ask all this in your precious and holy name this morning. Amen. Amen. You know, as we look at Daniel this morning, we see that he's in a pickle. You know, things have not worked out the way Daniel wanted them to work out. Things have not gone the way Daniel had planned. He is a young man. He's a teenager, probably. And y'all know how teenage boys are, right? You particularly know, don't you, Brittany? You think you do anyway, but you ain't got a clue. Because a teenage boy ain't got a clue, okay? Most of them, I still vaguely remember my teenage years. And there wasn't a whole lot going through my mind, but when was the next football game and when was the next meal? I mean, you know, that, and you know, as I get older, it ain't really changed a whole lot, you know. He's a teenage boy. He has been a member of a noble family, you know, part of the royal family from the tribe of Judah. One of when we look at the different tribes of Israel, Judah was the most warrior-like, the most antagonistic, the most, they didn't take things real well. And yet he's been in Israel. His life has been good. He's had the lap of luxury, and suddenly, probably through no fault of his own, his world has come crashing down. He has been taken captive. Their city was sieged by Nebuchadnezzar for 3 years. They were starved to death, essentially. Finally, they were conquered. Nebuchadnezzar came in. He overruns the city of Jerusalem and the nation of Israel. He takes those that he desires captive. He takes the stuff out of the temple. He takes all of the holy artifacts. He takes them back to Babylon, and he subjects them all to slavery. He takes God's holy artifacts and puts them in the temple, his temple, to his gods, which they were so important that we don't even remember who they are anymore, okay? And his life is just pretty much gone to pot, right? Here he was, you know, the big man on campus, if you will. He was kind of the stud duck around town, and all of a sudden he's nobody. And yet Nebuchadnezzar has told some of his commanders to find me a group of these young men, bring them in. We're going to teach them the language. We're going to teach them our laws, teach them, and we're going to put them to good use in our country doing things. And here, that's the situation that Daniel finds himself in. How many of us would have reacted the way Daniel does? Daniel, that verse 8 just jumps out at me. In the King James Version, it says, he resolved in his heart not to defile himself. In my translation, it says he purposed in his heart. That's King James. It says he purposed in his heart. The New International says he resolved in his mind. Mine says he made up his mind. He made a strong commitment to himself that he is going to honor God in spite of his circumstances. Let's look for just a moment at you and particularly at me, because I cannot speak for you. I can guess, but I can speak for me. How would I have reacted in that situation? First off, I would have been real upset with God. I would have been mad. I would have told him he couldn't keep his promise. I had done nothing to deserve the situation. I would have been mad. How many of you would have been similarly predisposed? also, here he is, a young teenage boy, being held captive by a hugely dominant army. He's got all of these big, stout military men standing around him, and you think he would have been a little bit overwhelmed and overshadowed by his circumstances. Maybe a little scared. You know, there's the little deal in the when I ain't scared. I would have been. These guys are big. They're tough. I know what they're capable of because I saw what they did in my city. I saw how they just annihilated people. And I'm nobody to them, so if they kill me, it's no big deal. I would have been scared to death. I would have been mad at God. Can any of y'all sympathize with all of that? Hey, life ain't fair sometimes, is it? It don't work out the way we had planned and the way we had thought. And yet here's Daniel, and what does he do? In spite of his circumstances, he resolves in his heart. He makes up his mind. He purposes in his heart that he is going to honor God with his life and not defile himself. In spite of what he might think God has done to him, he is still going to honor God. His life is going to honor God. And there's a very important lesson here for you and I to learn. That no matter what our circumstances, no matter where we are, no matter what's going on in our life, we need to honor God.
Amen.
And this was we make, any of you make New Year's resolutions? Yeah, I didn't either. Because you know what happens to New Year's resolutions? Yeah, they're gone. Yeah. They might last till January the 2nd if I try real hard. But we've made I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to exercise every day, or we've all made those decisions, haven't we? And we're going to commit to this, and we do for a while. But Daniel resolved deep in the depths of his heart, no matter what happens, I'm going to honor God. My life is going to be to serve God, whatever he calls for me to do. And so we can see Daniel's character, that it's a godly character. It's a God-loving character. And his reaction to his circumstances, it demonstrated his love for God. It demonstrates his faith in God. And it demonstrates his strength of his character. And he's willing to deny himself his own personal gratification, what he wanted, to honor God. He's willing to deny himself the good things of life if that's not honoring God. How many of y'all got that kind of character? I ain't raising my hand. I don't. I'm pretty self-centered, and I really enjoy pampering myself on occasion, don't y'all? It was real nice here, Dad. We didn't have nothing to do, and I got my jammies on. I got my blanket out. I had my heating pad. My Robbie was gone. I got my recliner. I had the remote control. I took a nap. I laid there and did absolutely nothing because that's what I wanted to do. I had things that I should have been doing, but I wanted some personal gratification for the afternoon. Daniel doesn't look at things that way. He understands anything and everything about his life is to honor God. And that's what he wants to do. And now, what is the big deal about food? How many of y'all would have rejected a trip down to, Dickie's barbecue with the spare ribs and the sausage links and the ham and the turkey and the brisket and the pulled pork? And Kenny, can I interest you? You'll sign up with me? Justin, you going with me? Let's just get the mega platter, okay? And yet, Daniel says, no. What was the big deal about food? Well, number one, he does not know if the food is what God has already banned, if it's the pork or if it's the rabbit, or it may be on one of the prescribed or not on the prescribed list of things that God has given them to eat. As he, y'all are studying in Numbers and Leviticus, and remember all the things you could and you couldn't eat, and this and that, and how it all had to be treated. He did not want to partake of any of that kind of food that God had proscribed. Or it could have been that it was meats that had been offered to some of Nebuchadnezzar's gods, and he did not want to dishonor God by eating meat that had been honored to a false god. Or probably it was his uncertainty. He didn't know where it came from. He didn't know what had happened to it in the past. He did not know if it was a good meat or not a good meat. He did not know if it had been offered to an idol or not. So to prevent an accidental dishonoring of God, he did not want to eat the meats. So what does he do? He wants beans and cornbread. Wants beans and cornbread. Now, this is a guy that's had the good life, okay? It ain't nothing wrong with beans and cornbread, I promise you. Been there, done that. Clyde, you ever had any beans and cornbread?
All my life.
Pretty good stuff.
Yes, it is.
But that ain't what we want every meal, is it? Not every meal. The monitor's too loud. That's what. If you can figure out how to turn that, that's why we're getting feedback. But finally dawns on me. But, food is such a small, little, insignificant thing. And yet, Daniel is making a big deal out of it because our faithfulness in small things is what God gives us the opportunity to be faithful in big things. Because anything that dishonors God, dishonors God. And so it's all big things, whether we think of it as a small thing or not. So as we look at our life, we want to keep things, everything in our life needs to honor God. Amen. And keep it a small thing. As we look at all of this, we see his character, but we also can see his wisdom as he goes through this. And how does he demonstrate his wisdom? First off, he's going counter to conventional wisdom, isn't he? Hey, this is what the king has given. Once again, if somebody more important, more influential than me tells me I'm going to do something, I'm probably going to do it, right? So he's going against that. He's going against all the peer pressure, everybody else, because all these other young men that were brought in to be trained, they're going to eat this stuff, but not Daniel. You ever get that at school, Brett? Everybody else is doing it. You ever use that on mama? Yeah. Everybody else is doing it. So he's not following conventional wisdom here. He's not going to follow the conventional path. He's kind of bucking the trend. So what does he do? Does he just stand up and say, this is what we're going to know? He goes and he very humbly and very meekly seeks permission from his superiors on if he would be able to do what would honor God. He asks for their permission. He is observant of what's going to happen to them. He is considerate of their circumstance and their situation. What's the guy saying? Well, if I keep that food from you, the king's liable to cut my head off. And he was dead serious. That's not we always say, Mama will kill me when they find out. No, he was dead serious. The king would kill him. Literally. And so Daniel was aware of his position and his circumstances. So he worked with him and he had a plan. He said, well, just give me this test. And let's just see what's better. And if that works out good, well, look how smart you look. And if it doesn't work out good, you can say, see how smart I am. I tried this, and boy, King, your food is so good. I was trying to show him how good your food. The guy comes out ahead, and so Daniel was considerate of those around him. He understood his decisions affects everybody, not just him. And so God had granted him wisdom of how to deal with people and how to work with people to accomplish God's tasks. When we're dealing with an ungodly world, things don't always, we can't just beat them over the head with the Bible, so to speak. We have to understand their circumstances, understand where they are in their life and their set of circumstances and the things that are surrounding them, and how can we best serve them while we honor God with our life. Now that's wisdom from a teenage boy. Now who would expect a teenage boy to have that kind of wisdom? Who would expect a grown man to have that kind of wisdom? Most of us grown men don't, do we? We just want to get in somebody's face and this is how it's going to be. I'm going to honor God. Right? Men, we can be, Jerry, you been there, done that? Okay. I seen Brother Kenny do that one day. But he accepted the consequences of his actions. He said, let me make a deal with you. Tell you what, test me. Give us 10 days here. Let's see how it comes out. If it works, great. If it don't, we'll eat your food. But he was willing to accept the consequences because we don't ever know how God's going to work things out, do we? You know, we have our thoughts, we have our plans, we have the idea of how we want things to happen. But Daniel was wise enough to know that God has a whole different set of plans and a whole different way of working things out. And so he was willing to accept what God was going to accomplish and how God was going to accomplish. And the third thing that I think we can see from this is the blessings that Daniel received because of his character and because of his wisdom. Yes, I'm watching the clock. What were the blessings that Daniel received? Well, number one, God was with him all the time. From the time the city of Jerusalem was besieged, from the time he was taken captive till the time he was taken to Babylon, to the time that he was brought into this group to be trained, God was there with him. God was dealing in the lives of those ungodly people because remember it says God had granted Daniel favor with these commanders. God was working in their life and he had caused them to look on Daniel favorably. God allowed his test to work out the way that he wanted it to. He blessed his test. God blessed them, and I'll get to the them here in just a minute, with multiple talents. He gave them knowledge and wisdom and intelligence, and to Daniel, even the gift of understanding visions. God gave them the talents and the gifts that they would need to accomplish. God placed them in positions of extreme high authority. God gave Daniel other like-minded men to encourage and to support him. He's not in this all alone. Remember, we got those other three guys. Who are those other three guys? Who do we really know them as? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? Abednego. But God gave him other like-minded people to encourage and support him. We have an entire congregation here. Daniel had 3 guys. I got a whole church load of you. There's probably 35 of you here this morning that will support me and encourage me as I try to live a godly life, as I try to go against what has been thrown at me and the things of this world that are not godly. And I try to live that godly life in an ungodly world. And now, we see all of these things. We see how God blessed his life. Well, he was in the lap of luxury. We could think, how did it all begin? It was because of his character and his initial decision, his purposing in his heart that he was going to honor God no matter what. He was going to honor God when things were bad. He was going to honor God when things were good. He was going to honor God when the world said, let's do it a different way. He was going to honor God when, boy, it sure would be nice to go have some of them spare ribs and sausage with him. He was going to honor God no matter what. It was his decision. And with you and I, each and every day when we wake up, we have a decision to make. Will I honor God today with my life? Will I live the life God's called me to do? Do I have someone there to encourage me and support me? Will I have the wisdom to do it in a way that honors God? Will I be humble as I accept God's blessings? Boy, if you start pouring some of these blessings on me, I'm going to start thinking I'm a pretty all right kind of guy, but not Daniel. Because he realized it all came from God.
Amen.
Where are you today? Do you have the character of Daniel, or would you like to have the character of Daniel? Are you willing to commit in your heart today, to resolve in your heart that you're going to honor God no matter what? That you're going to live a life for God no matter how he deals with you, no matter what's going on in your life. We're all going to have troubles in our life, ain't we?
Amen.
Things is not going to go the way we want them to go. It never does. Usually my plan ends before I can get the second foot on the floor in the morning, But God's in charge. God's in control. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Would you stand with me as we pray? Our most gracious Father, God, we thank you for the example of Daniel. We thank you for the example of other godly men that you have given to us in the Bible. God, help us to look at them and be encouraged, Father, that no matter what's come our way, no matter what's going on around us, no matter what the situation of the world is, and God, you know our world today is in an ungodly mindset. But God, all I can do today is to honor you today with my life. If there's anything that I do that does not, Father God, please show me. And help me to remove it from my life. My life will truly point to you and lead others to you. Father, for somebody here this morning that's just got a burden on their heart, somebody that's not been honoring you, somebody that hasn't been living a life of godly character or godly wisdom, not been receiving the blessings. God, if they need to come and just bow here before you this morning, whatever it may be, Father, this is their time to talk to you, to get their life the way you want it to be. Father, just bless this time. I ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
As we sing this morning,